That's kind of hard to believe in a way, right? Okay, so today I do want to show you the ending part of the Othello film that we've been watching. It's a pretty good version. I've seen really, really good stage versions of it. This one's okay. I feel like most of the characters are the actors are doing pretty well, but I want to finish showing you that at the end. But I do want to make sure that our goal today is to talk about the essay number one and midterm. Let's start with the midterm study guide because I know we've already talked about the essay at least briefly the week before Winter Storm Uri. I didn't know it had a name. Somebody told me it has a name, Uri, Uri. Um, in any case, I do want to talk about essay number one today. Now that we've finished Othello, and you should really be thinking about which topic you want to write about and maybe starting an outline or getting your thoughts together at least. It's not a research paper, so it's not like you should be going out and finding sources or anything like that for that paper, but you are going to have to kind of think about which topic, and then once you choose the topic, you'll have to kind of start planning out your ideas, make sure that it's 4 to 6 pages. You have to have a thesis that's developed enough that it's going to last for 4 to 6 pages. So we'll talk about that. But let's start with the midterm study guide, which I promised you for today. And here she is. Lots of this stuff I've kind of hinted at. A lot of times when I'm going through material, I'll say, this is how this is going to be tested on the midterm. This is how you'll see this on the midterm. You might see this on the midterm. So I'm trying to give you heads up throughout the entire course about, how things are going to turn out. I don't want the midterm to be a mystery. I don't want the final to be a mystery. I want it to be something that you're ready for and you're prepared for. And I also don't want to give you a bunch of stuff to study that isn't going to be on the midterm. So lots of times I'll say, this isn't going to be on the midterm, but. So all of that is just designed to help you. I always hated it when I was in school and the teacher said, well, just study everything, or study chapters 1 through 25. There's a test on Friday, and then the test was really only on 3 chapters. You could have just told me those 3 chapters. And I just felt like that was a little manipulative. So I want to make sure that it's clear what will be on the midterm. It is comprehensive for everything since the beginning of the term. Let me go through the logistics and the information about the midterm first. I put that here. And then after that, I have the material that you're going to want to study for the test. And I'll go through that too. So just a reminder that the midterm counts for, if you have questions, I have the chat open so you can, put questions in there as I go through. If you have them, I'll respond to them. Okay, so the midterm is 20% of the course grade. The final is another 20%. So it's a big chunk. It's equal to all of the discussions for the term. So it's important that you do well on the midterm. If, it doesn't have to be 100 necessarily, but if you falter on the midterm a little bit and it's a lower grade than you would normally like, then you're going to have to work harder on the papers and the final and the remaining discussions to bring your grade back up again. So that's why I wanted to give you the study guide today. The midterm is in 2 weeks. So schedule in some time to start looking through the material. I don't want that 20% to affect you negatively. The testing window. So instead of a specific day, I am not going to make this a midterm where you have to show up and take a test while you're on Zoom. I'm not going to have you use the lockdown browser. So that means that, whatever notes you might have, anything like that, you can use. I'm not going to know. The people at STC are not going to know. It is not a timed test. So you can take as long as you want. The only caveat to that is that you have to finish it in one sitting. They have it set up so that once you start, you have to finish it in that sitting. You're not allowed, it's not going to allow you to save, go do something else, come back the next day and finish the exam. So you're going to have to do it straight through. Now, if you're having connectivity issues, I already spoke to the administrators here. So if you have like kind of spotty internet and you're worried that when you sit down to start the test, that it might drop out on you, you can come to school. Even if you're not officially a hybrid student, we can give you permission to come for one day for a period of time, whatever. All you have to do is check in, bring a mask, bring your laptop or your Chromebook, whatever. You can connect here at school. You can be here in my classroom, or we can find an alternate location or whatever works for you, so that you can sit and complete the entire test in one time frame. So if you're worried about that because your internet drops out, then just let me know, send me an email. The test window is from March 10th, which is a Wednesday, through Saturday the 13th. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday that week, we're not going to have a Thursday class that week or a Friday class. So if you want to let me know, and any of those days at any point in time when you can work it out, you can come up here and do your test so that you don't have to worry about your internet dropping out on you. If you're not worried about your internet, then you can do it anytime in that frame. It will not be available after midnight the night, 11:59, March 13th, that Saturday. So you need to get it done before then. Try not to wait until 6 p.m. that Saturday, because if you have issues, if you have problems, if you can't access it, if you need a new password, all that stuff it's on Blackboard, the test. So I want to make sure that you don't have any logistical problems. I can help you with them, but if it's the last minute, then it's kind of hard to get that straightened out. Okay, so that's it for testing window. Types and number of questions. It is a written test. So there's no multiple choice, there's no matching, there's no true false, there's not that kind of a test. It's all written. So there are 15 short answer questions that are 3 points each. And those questions, you're expected to write 4 to 5 sentences. So like a short paragraph, 15 of them. Now, the way that they set up the test is that there's a bank of terms, concepts, quotations, and people that we have been looking at and studying: authors, historical people, stuff like that. Quotations, main quotations from the texts. There are some from Beowulf, some from Canterbury Tales, and some from Othello. There are not quotations from poems or anything like that. So what will happen is, on those short answer questions, you will get a question and it will say, for example, if it's a term, explain the term weregild and how it is significant to a piece of literature. So you'll have to know what that term means, and you'll have to connect it to a specific piece of literature that relates to it. You'll have to do these 3 things right here for each one of those items on those short answers. Define it or explain it, identify a piece of literature that it relates to, and then explain how it relates to that piece of literature. But that's just 4 to 5 sentences. So you don't have to go into depth. It's not an essay. You don't have to, quote from anything. You just have to know what those terms are. Or it could be a concept, like heroic ideal. Or like you can see if you scroll down that I've listed all of the possible ones here. All these ones are the ones that are in the test bank. I don't know which 15 you're going to get, and neither do you. So the way they set it up, there are a bunch of them in the database, and you could get any of these ones that are listed here. So if they're listed under the different, well, I organized them by unit, but I've put all the ones that are on the test on the study guide. So what I'm saying is, you're not going to run into a term on the exam that wasn't on the study guide, if that makes sense. But you're not going to get all the terms that are possible, because you're only going to do 15 of them, or quotes or whatever. Hopefully that makes sense. You can see there are more terms and concepts and people here under Unit 2, and then Unit 3, which we're just about to start, there's some there too. So that's the first type of question. The second type of question, then there are 5 essays. By essays, I don't really think that it's an essay, but what they are calling an essay is a longer response. So those are like 10 plus sentences. These are going to be specific to pieces of literature. They're going to ask you to compare. They're a lot like the discussion questions, but the expectation for the response is a little bit shorter. So compare, remember the first discussion that we had about compare the heroism of Beowulf to the heroism of Gawain. Could be something like that. In these, you'll be expected to interpret, analyze, and apply it to the readings. The more specific you are, the more points you will get. And those are 10 points each because they're more involved. So those will also come from the reading passages themselves, and also some of these terms might be involved there. Then there will be the final essay. There's really 6 essays. There'll be a new poem on the exam that you have not seen before, and it'll be from one of the time periods that we've been studying. You'll be asked to analyze the poem a little bit. You'll have to say, you know, like, what's the speaker's situation? Maybe discuss figurative language, depending on which poem you get. There are multiple poems in the database. I don't know which one you're going to get. The theme, you know, kind of do the 1, 2, 3, a quick 1, 2, 3 analysis. And then also you'll have to identify the time period of that poem. So knowing what you know about Renaissance poetry and Anglo-Saxon poetry, I should be able to throw something up there on the test, and you should be able to immediately recognize that that is, you know, a 17th century poem, or that is a Renaissance poem, or that is a poem from the Middle Ages, because we've been going through what are the qualities of those, of the writing of those time periods. So you'll have to also, besides analyzing it, identify the time period and explain why, what are the qualities of this poem that make it that, you know, fall into that time frame. I don't know how long the test will take for you to do. That's why I'm not going to have class that, we'll have class on Tuesday of that week. Let me go to the calendar again real quick. On that week, we will have class on Tuesday because we'll be finishing up Paradise Lost. But we will not have class on Thursday, and we will not have class on Friday, even though we could have had class on Friday. So you'll have time to, you know, not worry about having to show up to class, and you can incorporate that into whatever your study plan is and whatever your plan is for actually taking the exam. I think roughly, if I was going to sit down and take the exam, I would probably want to leave about 3 hours, just so I was comfortable. You don't have a clock ticking, so maybe leave it for a time when you have an open-ended situation and you don't have to be in another class at 1 o'clock or something. And that way you can use as much time as you need, but you do need to finish it in that sitting. So leave yourself open, and, you know, that's why I decided not to have class, so you'd have a little more open time to make your decisions about it. Are there any questions about the basic logistics and how the test is going to be structured? I don't see anything in the chat, but it's good for me to ask. It is on Blackboard. You do not need the lockdown browser. I don't see much point in that, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm going to say this off the record, but if I wanted to look stuff up while I was taking an exam, I could just use my phone. I don't understand the lockdown browser, to be honest with you. You're on the honor system. I would use my notes. Hopefully you have them. If you don't have notes, I don't know how you'll put all that stuff together, but yeah. Okay, I don't see anything else. So let me kind of go through the way that I've structured the material that you'll need to study. So this is a guide so that you can efficiently review the material that will be on the test. So what I did for each section, each unit, is I put in what are the major pieces that we studied that will show up on the exam. And then I put down the background material. So there could be some of those short answer questions coming from the background. Sometimes I've done a slideshow, and so I've linked that here. It's also in Blackboard, and it's also linked on the calendar. But this is one place where you kind of have a study hub So I linked any of those, like these are PowerPoints that I presented in class. So I've linked those here. Also the textbook pages on the PDF page numbers. Then I've listed all of the pertinent terms, concepts, and people that we studied for that unit. Those are the genesis for short answer and some of the essay questions. So I would want to look up, make sure I understood all of those concepts, and not just the definition of the concept. The test is going to ask you to relate it to a piece of literature or a time period, and then explain why it relates to that period. So for example, if chivalry pops up as one of your short answer questions and it asks you, it's going to ask you to do this: define, explain, identify specific pieces of literature that relate to it, and explain how the term relates to the piece of literature. I would go to Gawain, or I would go to Wife of Bath, her tale, so for chivalry. So you're going to have to kind of know which terms relate to which pieces. If I got Weiryield, then I would talk about Beowulf. So yeah, even in the units, you're going to have to know which one refers to, some of them refer to the whole thing, but some of them refer specifically to a piece. Like Thomas Becket, I can only talk about Canterbury Tales. It's the one he relates to. If you don't know why, then go study that. And then after that are the study guides for that unit. They're also in the Blackboard, and they're also on the calendar, but I linked them here so that you'd have like a one spot location for everything. You don't have to spend time gathering it all. Just spend time studying, right? I did all the gathering for you already. Okay, so then unit 2 is the Renaissance. That's the one that we're finishing up right now. There's the major pieces, the background material. Here are the terms that we've been studying or are in the reading. I don't always talk about every single thing that was in the reading assignments. So if it was in the reading, it might show up on the test, even if I didn't mention it in class. So, study these terms right here. And then here are the different study guides so that you can go back and review if you need to. And then this is just the same structure for all 3 units. We're not going to finish unit 3 before the midterm. So unit 3 is about to go up on Blackboard. It's taking me a while to convert all the page numbers from the book to the PDF. So I think that will be ready later today, if not for sure tomorrow, the whole unit 3. But we're only doing the first part of the unit 3 because we lost that week. So the test will only go through Paradise Lost. So that's why I haven't, unit 3 will also include darn it, Lilliputians, is Jonathan Swift, Gulliver's Travels. Sorry, I had a little moment. I didn't put that on here though, because it's not going to be on the exam. So this is only what's on the exam from unit 3. Just Paradise Lost. We're reading only books 1 and 2, and that will be starting next week. So here's the background material just for Paradise Lost that we'll be going through. You haven't done this yet. We're doing that coming up, but these are things to pay attention to. Here are the terms. You can see I even said here are the lecture notes coming up for next Tuesday. And then we'll be working through Paradise Lost, book 1 and 2. So here are the study guides that we'll be working on next week for those. Those are already on the calendar, and we'll be starting with them leading up to the exam. So that's the material that will be on the exam and the structure for it. Any questions? I think study groups work. I think, getting with 1 or 2 other people from this class, or there are 2 other sections. Maybe you have somebody that's a good friend of yours that you trust their intellect and maybe also their timeliness, and you can get together and go through the study guide together. Or, maybe it's a good practice also to kind of say, okay, well, if there's 3 of us, you go back and really, really review unit 1, and then I'll really review unit 2, and the third person will really review this part of unit 3, and then we'll get together and we'll go through it together, but one of us will be kind of like the pro with that one, and we can converge, you know, get yourself a Zoom call going, or I don't know, maybe actually go out into the world and meet up at the Starbucks. I don't know if you can go into the Starbucks. Anyway, that works too. If you're more of a, you know, autonomous person, you can definitely study it yourself. I'm just trying to give you tips of what students have told me in the past has worked for them to be successful on the test. I don't see any questions in the chat, so apparently that's that. Anyway, I can touch on the midterm study guide next week a little bit if there are any questions as you get started with your study plan, and help you prepare for that if you do have any questions. The other thing that I wanted to talk about today was essay number 1, which I have pushed back the due date for that. The new deadline for that is the Sunday at the end of spring break, the 21st. I will be available throughout spring break if you are working on your paper and you want me to look at it, if you want me to give you some feedback on certain aspects of your paper as you're working on it, I'll be glad to do that. I'm available now. So at any point in the next couple of weeks while you're working on finishing up that first main essay, it's 15% of the semester grade. So it's almost equivalent to the midterm and the final. So I want to make sure that you do well, which is one reason why I, you know, delayed it as far as I did, so that you have plenty of time. It's an Othello paper, but that way you have time to develop your ideas. If you don't want to do work over spring break, then you've got time to work that into your schedule over the next couple of weeks, get it mostly finished, and you don't have to worry about it over spring break. You can interact with me if you want to get feedback. But let's talk about that one now that we've finished Othello. I did talk about it last week, but now we're finished with the play, so it will make a little more sense, I think, looking at the topics together and kind of thinking about how would you answer that question. Is that something that you feel like you could address in 4 to 6 pages? And I want to go through the different prompts a little bit to just prime the pump a little bit in thinking about which ones you might select. So I want to take maybe 5 minutes or so, 10 minutes, just to go through each one of the topics. If you haven't chosen a topic at this point, I think you should try to do that in the next couple of days so that you can start planning and organizing your paper, and you have time to get feedback if you need it. So let's go through them. You can choose any of these 5 different topics, or number 6 says if you have a topic not represented here, you can clear it with me. If you think of something else that you want to write about that will fill up 4 to 6 pages, then just shoot it on an email and I'll respond to that and let you know if that will work. So here are the 5 that you can choose from. Compare 1 to 2 Shakespearean sonnets to monologues or soliloquies in Othello that share a common theme or topic. So what arguments is Shakespeare making about the themes that you address? So this is going outside of the play, and you would look back at the times when Iago is delivering his soliloquies about his plans for Rodrigo or his, you know, plot against Othello. Monologues are when somebody is talking for a long period of time, but there are other people on stage. Othello does that quite frequently. Iago does that sometimes. So you can look and find those in the text. If you need help figuring out where soliloquies and monologues are, you can Google it, or you can ask me and I'll show you a few of those. Number 2 is about the topic of war. Are you noticing that some of these are the ones from the study guide? Because I wanted to make sure that you were thinking about them and preparing not just for the midterm, but also for the paper. Explain how the topic of war becomes a complex concern for Othello when he returns. Does he adjust to a world where he no longer can define himself by war? Now, by returns, they mean the beginning of the play when he's back from war, before he goes to Cyprus. So this one is suggesting that maybe part of his insecurity with Desdemona comes from the idea that he has trouble adjusting to domestic life rather than military life. So that's something that you can think about and explore. I mean, he's becoming more domesticated, he's marrying and settling down. How does that create a conflict? How could that create a conflict in him? You know, the soldier, the general part of Othello versus the domestic part of Othello. And then you can compare and contrast, if you want, to Beowulf or Gawain, because they're also warriors. Number 3 is about love. The torment of love and the insidiousness of jealousy and mistrust are existential problems we all face. I can do a talk for you on existentialism if you want. It's a 20th century concept, so it would be like taking a lens and looking back on the piece of literature. But existentialism basically is about how life has no inherent meaning, and it's up to us to create our own meaning in life. And people do that in different ways. And you can do that however you want, according to existentialism, with religious beliefs or, you know, having meaning in life through service or whatever way. But whatever you choose, you have to deal with the consequences of that. That's what existentialism is in a nutshell. Explore how the play makes us confront these eternal problems through the tale of Othello and Desdemona. So, identity. What important turning points related to jealousy does the play have that leads to the final tragedy? And if they had avoided those turning points, would there have been a different conclusion? So that's sort of speculating a little bit on how things would be different if at certain key moments in the play, there were different choices made. And then connecting that up to the existential problems of life. Number 4 is about race and otherness. Otherness just means when you're in a position where you're the different one and your differences are highlighted because you're the only one that's different. And so this one asks you to confront the problems in English society with race that were just beginning to happen in the Renaissance because of expansion and, you know, the fact that there were different types of people through exploration that were being identified, and the British had to sort of start to understand that there are other types of people in the world, you know, the Far East and Africa and elsewhere. Using inferences from the text, explore how Othello reflects the racial makeup and racial fears of Elizabethan England. You might have to, if you're not, you know, super well versed on the history of immigration in England, especially in the Elizabethan era, you might have to do some research that might not show up in your paper, but you might have to research that in order to make an informed statement about how you see that happening in Othello. So number 4 is kind of tough and probably would take a little extra research just to have the background information to answer that question. Number 5 is about evil. The problem of evil is hotly debated. So how do we understand evil in this play? Well, the simple answer is Iago, but what fuels it? How does his evil create suffering for others? And what does that evil, what could it represent in society? So those are your 5 options, but you also do have the option that if you have a different idea, something that as you were reading the play really stuck with you or you were really interested about and you want to delve into that in more detail, then just send me an email. It doesn't have to be long, saying that you want to explore this, and I'll either help you refine that topic or I'll say looks good, and you can go with that topic if none of these are doing it for you. But are there any questions on those ones that are prepared for you on the page. Nope. Okay. I always like to just wait a minute. I know it's probably kind of dopey from your end to just watch me staring at the screen, but I want to make sure that you guys have opportunities. Okay, so there's a scoring rubric for this essay right here. It's the same as the one from first semester because literary analysis is literary analysis. So obviously we're using MLA. You need to use MLA formatting, meaning where the heading goes, the 1-inch margins, all of that. You will only have one text on your works cited list, and that will be Othello, because you should be using the text if you're quoting from it or whatever. You shouldn't be using outside sources. All of this is about your interpretation and your analysis of that play. So this is pretty basic. Your paper needs to be formatted properly. I don't think anybody has trouble with that. It needs to be organized, needs to be grammatically correct, and you need to have a strong thesis with support on that. So that is linked there for your reference as you are drafting. There's a really important section right here, and I mentioned it last time as well. This is not a summary of Othello. You should assume that the person who's reading your essay already knows the play and has taught the play. And so you don't have to explain why things are happening in the play. You don't need to summarize what happened in the play. You're past that and you're talking about the play and referring to the play in order to make your points about one of those 5 topics. So papers that are mostly summary can't really do much better than a 60 or so, which is a D in the STC grading. So then it says successful essays will include effective titles. You can subtitle. I don't think that's necessary in a paper like this, but developed introductions, clear thesis statements, organized body paragraphs. So that's where consultation comes in. If you write a draft and you want me to look at it, I can look at it for those things. Like maybe you're worried that your thesis statement isn't clear enough. You can email me and send me what you have of your paper, even if it's not done, or just send me your thesis statement and say, do you think this is complete thesis statement and clear? Or you can send me a draft and say, I'm not sure about my body paragraph organization. Could you look at that for me? And so I will do that and give you some feedback before it's even due. All that's free, charge, free. You don't have to pay anything. So that's just a reminder. Do not use outside sources. This is your opportunity to demonstrate your understanding of Othello. If you use outside sources, then you are risking using a failing grade. You're not relying on anybody else's opinion of Othello, just your own opinions and interpretations. So what if we do the topic with the sonnets for the sources? Yeah, you would just source that sonnet. I mean, it's probably in your textbook. That's okay. Like what they mean is that you're only sourcing the primary material. You're not sourcing any secondary material where somebody was writing about that and you're quoting them and just agreeing with them. You're stating things and they're your ideas about the text, and then you're supporting your own ideas. Will you maybe have to go back and do some background research so that you can have those opinions? Yeah, but you're not quoting from those sources. You're just educating yourself so that you have a solid response, if that makes sense. Like here, let me give you an example. If I was asked to do a paper on Abraham Lincoln, and they wanted me, the whole paper was to compare Abraham Lincoln to Donald Trump, let's just say. I might want to do some background research and scholarly sources to kind of see what are some main points of comparison or, like contrasting elements of those 2 presidencies. I might have to go and do all that background research just so that I could write the paper and make my opinions known about where those 2 presidencies overlapped and where they diverged. but I'm not going back to any of those sources and saying, you know, Friedrich on page 27 says, you're not, it's not a report. It would be because I'm informed on that topic, I'm giving you my ideas on how those two presidencies overlap. I'm hoping that you can see the difference in that. So the background information that you would for sure have to have would be a good understanding of the play. That's where the study guides come in. But some of these topics, like you mentioned, the sonnet, you would have to go back and really understand that sonnet. So you're going to have to do that work, and you can quote from that. Or like the one about English society, that one you might have to go and study a little bit before you can have an informed opinion about that. But you wouldn't quote them in the paper, is what I'm saying. Okay. So the only thing that goes in the works cited is the original text that you're analyzing. All right. I don't see any other questions there. We can revisit. I think there's a couple of points on the schedule where we'll be talking about essay number 1 again. Did I pop that in there somewhere? No, I didn't. I can maybe put it on next Thursday or something like that. But from this point on, if you have issues, questions with the paper, just communicate with me, and I'm pretty good about getting back to people and responding if you have questions or if you want me to look at something. All right, I want to show you the remainder of the film. Oh, I don't even know if we have time. How about we do it this way? I'll start playing from where we left off on Tuesday or yesterday. What is today? Today's Friday. I'll start playing where we left off on Friday, which is when Iago has convinced Othello that Desdemona is cheating, and he is gradually becoming more hostile toward her, leading into the tragedy. I'll play as much, I'll just play it to the end. If you have to go, you can go. The film is in the Blackboard. Oh, that's the unit 3 I was working on. I do have the film in my, Google Drive. And so I've linked you to it down here. So if you start watching and you don't have time to finish watching it with us right now, then you can go right here in other materials and just watch it from my Google Drive if you want to. Okay. All right. If you leave before we finish, then I'll just say have a good weekend, and I will see you on Tuesday. There's no reading for Tuesday. I'm going to do some poetry for you on Tuesday to introduce the Restoration in the 18th century. So there's no reading assignment for Tuesday, okay? All right, on to the film.